Welcome into the Train with the Best podcast, a podcast that's bringing high performance to the people. I'm Craig Hoffman, a performance coach, personal trainer, and media personality.
And I'm Chris Gorez, international presenter and master trainer.
And today, Chris, we got a double barrel episode, if you will, although somewhat related. In about 15, 20 minutes, you will hear from Cody Mooney, who is one of the leads at Pliability, a great mobility app. And you'll hear the story about how they got started and why they do what they do, why they dedicated so much into the mobility space. Pliability, by the way, great name. There's no one that's ever been like, oh, I don't want to be more pliable.
Right. I think Pliability gained a lot of popularity back when Tom Brady was still playing for the Patriots, and his guy was talking about pliability and how we trained for flexibility and mobility and resiliency through being able to move in different directions and being able to bounce back from those movements versus just creating these big stiff muscles that often still get injured. So it's a really cool app that takes you through some stretching routines that are going to be useful no matter what phase of training that you're in. If you're like somebody like me who's just a general population person right now, if you're somebody who's training for high rocks, if you're somebody who is getting ready for a football season, I think it's cool to have some routines to go to.
Maybe a half marathon on Sunday. That's coming up this week.
Is that you?
Yeah, it's this Sunday.
Nice.
We'll have to recap that on a future episode. But I want to start today, not with what I have coming up, but with some conversations that I've had recently. And it's kind of weird how this happens sometimes in my media life, where there's kind of a through line through various things that I've done. And sometimes it's just my interests take me, if I'm doing interviews, to certain places, and I like asking about certain things because of something that I'm interested in. But I was having a conversation, the first one where this came up was with Croy Bethune, who is the star rookie for the Washington Spirit, third overall pick in the 2024 NWSL draft. As we record this on Thursday, May 2nd, she's actually coming off a 3-assist game in the Spirit's win over Chicago last night. Yeah, youngest player ever to do it in the NWSL, only the 5th NWSL player ever to have 3 assists in one game, first in Spirit club history. So she's killing it. Short version. She's far and away, and not that there aren't other great rookies, including Hal Hirschfeld, her teammate here in DC, but she is far and away the early favorite for Rookie of the Year. And Croy has been through 3 ACL injuries, and it just absolutely brutal, youth career in that way, late in high school and then 2 in college. And what we were talking for an interview, and she's like, I became a professional, or kind of basically had to, because these injuries, like all of a sudden rehab and prehab and like the stretching, the rolling, every single thing that we hear about like old vets doing, I had to do because I just wasn't going to go through that again. And like, who knows if she could, right? You have 4, like good luck getting your athleticism and everything back. It also probably is like a testament to where we are with ACL rehab and recovery and surgery, by the way, all the different advancements that she's even playing in the first place, nevertheless, at this extraordinarily high level. But then I had a similar conversation where I was talking with Ashley Hatch about kind of the rookies in general, how Croy and Hal Hirschfeld and some of the other rookies all are kind of doing that stuff with the Spirit, that there's been a couple of them that they drafted this year that have been through injuries, and it's just a super mature group, and they take care of their bodies, and all the vets are like, dang, well, we got to keep up with the rookies. And then I wound up having the same conversation, or a similar conversation, with Shakira Austin, the Mystics star forward, who is coming off of a labrum injury in her hip, and it was her first major injury. And she's like, it just changed my whole perspective on like what I have to do to perform at the highest level. And I think it's interesting because it's the through line of injury and high performance. And the first step to high performance is being available and making sure that you can actually perform at a high level, not just slog through. So I thought it was an interesting conversation that I wanted to bring to the pod, and I'm going to leave it open-ended for you. Like, which direction do you think, like, when I tell you that story, right, that I've talked to these multiple really high-level athletes who are very young in their careers. The oldest amongst those is Shakira, the most experienced among them anyway, Shakira, who's going into her 3rd WNBA season. What's your reaction to hearing those stories?
There's a couple of reactions. One, it's a testament to them as individuals who take this seriously, who had goals and dreams of becoming a professional athlete and matched their daily habits with their goals, right? Like everybody says that, oh, I want to go play in NWSL one day. I want to go play in the WNBA one day. I want to go play Division I sports, but your habits don't match. You don't sleep well, you don't eat well, you don't practice, you don't work out, you don't study, you don't watch film, show up late to meetings. And one of the big habits that you'll pick up on right away is how well do you take care of your body, right? Like, so if you're coming in for workouts and a 6 p.m. workout, you show up at 5:59 or 6:01, that tells me a lot about how seriously you take this workout, right? Like, yeah, in your mind, I think you think I take it seriously. I show up to workouts, but there's just a different level. When you want to become a professional at something, it's a different level. I try to tell people that all the time. It's not just the talent and the skill, which is a phenomenal gap that I think people still are realizing is a lot bigger than what they would have thought it was. But then also just the mentality and their daily habits are so different than your regular athlete or even your athlete who thinks that they're taking things seriously. So that's the first thing I take is, credit to these individuals for doing that. And then number two, whoever it is that introduced these things to them, whether it have been their physical therapist, whether they had a strength and conditioning coach or a personal trainer, if they had somebody in their organization that taught them these things, a credit to them as well. And the research, the people who are out here doing the research, right? Like FIFA did a ton to put out that FIFA 11 plus to show, hey, these are the things that you should be doing as a warm up that's going to help reduce the risk of injury and reduce the impact and the seriousness of injury if you do get injured. And those things work. It works. And this is proof that it does because it's working for everybody. If it was just some sort of anecdotal thing, it might have worked for one person or another, and then it would just kind of fade off. But these things are working. They're working globally. So it's something that I wish that more teams and individuals just made it a part of their thing instead of trying to fight this, right? Instead of trying to say, oh, no, well, we have our own way of doing things. Like, no, just do what the research says. That's why
Right.
people do the research, right?
Best practices are best for a reason. Um,
Yeah.
I remember taking a course once, and it was basically like there's research that suggests that you can deadlift with some rounding in your spine, right? Like as long as it's not a sudden, a
Sure.
sudden jerk. That as long as you hold the position, but the optimal position is with a neutral spine. And the
Right.
person was like, "Why would you do anything other than optimal?" Like, and I think that there are situations, in other aspects of training where it's like, yeah, we should, train for suboptimal situations, suboptimal, like landing, whatever, like you're going to have to take contact, like things like that. You can't just train in perfect circumstances all the time if you're a sport athlete, because sport is full of unfortunate circumstances. Not that you should put yourself at injury risk, but like you need to understand and be able to train for not having like clear space around you or never taking contact or things like that. But when it comes to something like a warm up, like you should never have to play a game without warming up. So just practice just have the same warm up. Like you don't need to be overly creative with it. Like you just need to do the things that are going to get your body ready to go. There are, of course, I think things that if you're like a team in a team setting where you do the same thing every day, you don't want to make it monotonous, but like now we're getting into the nuances of it all, but they all accomplish the same general things, right? Like the principles are the same of what you're trying to achieve. But back to kind of more specific to in this case, these women, but these athletes, because I'm sure if I were to go talk to some of the Commanders draft picks about some of the things they've been through, I'd probably get some of the same conversations if some of them have been through injuries. But I think that it's the kind of thing where as youth athletes, there's so much emphasis on the results and making a team here, and like there's so much emphasis, I guess that's the best way to put it, on results. And I think that when you look at the research and you look at who's successful on like a global stage in different parts of the world where they do things differently, you see the people that have the most success over time, and especially once it takes time to get to the highest levels, the programs and the sports and the countries that focus on process and teaching young athletes what the right process is are the ones that succeed the most. And I just hope that, American youth sports can learn a lot from that. And, Croy doesn't have to have 3 ACL tears before she's like, oh yeah, no, this stuff is super important.
Yeah, so you just talked about another huge layer of injuries and the rate of injuries that we have in our sports, and particularly in our youth sports programs here in America. It is results driven. It is a thing where you're playing too many games, and
Mhm.
the emphasis is on those results and not the process. And there's two things. There's a lot of reasons why the pay to play system, and we don't have to get into that. But when we talk about the process, it's very hard for young individuals to embrace the process because it is monotonous, as you said. And so that's why I give credit to these individuals. There's a reason why these individuals are in the pros now. And that's because they didn't get bored with it. They didn't get bored with the mundane. It was not exciting to do some of these warm up, movement prep, prehab type of movements before a game or a practice. Those are not the things that you post on Instagram that look super sexy and it's like going to get
And
you
it sucks to have to
these
show up
results.
early. Like you're just like,
And it
oh wait,
sucks.
cool. I got
Yeah,
30 extra minutes in the morning that I don't have to ease into my day or to do other stuff or to sleep in. Yeah, like
yeah.
no 20 something year old wants to do that.
No 14-year-old wants to do that, right? Like nobody wants to do the mundane, boring things. But if you look at all of the great athletes, especially on the pro level, they're doing all the boring, mundane things, right? Like Jamal Murray just hit 2 game winners in game 2 and game 5 of the series to knock the Lakers out. Well, guess what he starts with? Form shooting from 1 foot away. Form shooting from 1 foot away, right? Like that's what he starts with, and he does that, and he doesn't get bored with it. He does it every single time, right? So, when you're getting ready for a workout, when you're getting ready for a practice or a game, these small things that are 10 to 15 minute routines that are pretty boring, they go a long way in making sure that you're able to perform at your best, and again, reduce that risk of injury.
Yeah, no doubt about it. If people are like, okay, well then I got to do this, or my kid needs to do this.
Yeah,
What do I do? What do you think some of those things look like for a Croy Bethune, a Shakira Austin? Obviously, some of them might be specific to the injuries that they've had. For Croy, an ACL; for
sure.
Shakira, a labrum tear. But general best practices for your kind of prehab warm up type of stuff. What would you think that looks like?
Yeah, so we've talked about this in our corrective exercise continuum, and I'm comfortable talking about that because, like I said, the FIFA 11 has put out stuff, USA Soccer has put out stuff. I'm privileged to be able to see some of this research, and they all pretty much say the same things. Right now, the injuries themselves are a little bit different. Everybody's injury is a little bit different, and what I would tell people and remind people that before they start this process is the normal amount of pain is no pain,
Yeah.
right? Like the normal amount of pain is no pain. There's no such thing as, yeah, this is the normal amount of pain that I should be experiencing. That's not true. You should be experiencing no pain. So when you're going through these things, if you are feeling sharp shooting pains that isn't getting better as you start to move around, then that's a warning sign. That's something where you probably need more than just a prehab routine or a corrective exercise routine. But it's going to start with some sort of, I like to start with some sort of movement to get blood flowing, right? We know that circulation is the key here. So the more that we can get activation and circulation into the muscles, um, the more pliable they're going to be, right? The more
Heyo.
moldable they become, right? So you can get in there and you can lengthen those muscles because there's some blood flow. And once you lengthen those muscles, now that they're moving correctly, now you can do some activation and isolated exercises to activate those muscles that aren't always getting the attention that they need, right? I always think of it as a seesaw, right? So if you're thinking of a seesaw and one side of the seesaw is your tight muscles, one side of the seesaw is your muscles that are a little bit weak. Well, I can stretch it so that the seesaw comes back to balance. But if I don't do something to strengthen the side that was weak, it's just going to go back to unbalanced again. So you have to make sure that once you get blood flowing, once you get some lengthening with some stretching or some active stretching, whatever it is, then you got to get in there with some activation, whether it be like glute bridge exercises, anterior tibialis exercises for your ankles, balance exercises, something to wake up that muscle activation to keep it where you want it to be.
Yeah, no, I think of it just to even simplify it further. Like you have, like typically if you have an injury, like contact injuries aside, right?
Yep.
Non-contact stuff, like something that was supposed to work didn't. And ultimately, you want to make sure that the things that you're going to use are prepared. And so, after again, like general movement and things like that to get the circulation flowing, ultimately, do you activate the things that you're going to use? And activation is kind of a funny word. There's been, I think, a lot of mixed research
Sure.
on activation. Like muscles don't shut off per se, but can you build the mind muscle connection? Can you make sure that they're
Correct.
firing?
Yeah.
Like, can you kind of double check whatever version of activation you want to use? We're not here to have the activation debate or get into any of the literature on that,
All right.
but
Right.
like the concept of activation is real. And so, can you ultimately activate, become aware of all the things that you want to use? And so, like for me, when I run, I got to make sure that my lower leg is warmed up. I got to make sure I have an issue sometimes getting my posterior tib to kick on. It's caused me a ton of problems over the years. So, can I do like the calf raise work and then like the low level ballistic type of movements to get that lower leg firing and make sure that all the things are doing the things that they're supposed to. Otherwise, as I start to stack miles, I'm going to have some real issues because other things are going to have to work too hard. The joints are going to take undue pressure, and ultimately that deteriorates into an injury. And so, whether it's that, whether it's your glutes, whether it's your glute med, whether it's your quad, whatever it is that you need to make sure is going, get that thing going in the controlled setting. We talk about the
Right.
optimal versus suboptimal circumstances, and the whole benefit to a prehab is you are in full control. It is a fully optimal circumstance. You can get the full range of motion. You take your time. You are not doing it on demand to match the demands of the game as it's happening. You are in control, and so taking advantage of that time and using that timing. And I guess if we're talking about the habits portion of it, giving yourself
Right.
enough time because they will not move the game back because you're not done with your warm
Correct.
up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
make sure you get
Exactly.
there on time. Taking advantage and using your time correctly is essential.
You talked about something right there with the activation portion that really is important because for a normal, healthy athlete, yeah, I mean, muscles don't turn off. You don't lose that. Like you're not gonna like turn a muscle on that was completely off, right? But when you go through an injury, you have your tissue trauma or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
was that was injured, right? And then you have that period of physiological recovery, right? Like the muscle or the tendon or whatever it is has to heal. There's maybe inflammation, but then when you go back to sport or when you go back to activity, whatever it is that you're doing, those neural pathways don't always fire the way that they used to. So that's why these things, like you said, building that brain muscle connection, that's so important to be able to, one, reintroduce that movement to the brain to let the brain know that it's safe, right? That's the
Right.
number one thing that you kind of have to do is say, hey, you don't have to send inflammation anymore. You don't have to send pain signals anymore. We can actually control this. We can do this. It's safe, right? So we can stop at least that portion of the neuromuscular side of that injury, and then go back to performance, right? So that's why those activation techniques are so important.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Anything else we want to add on this conversation before we head to our chat with Cody?
No, again, I think it's a testament to those young athletes. I love seeing it. I love seeing the people that take these things seriously because it is the slow, not slow. It is the low hanging fruit that's out there
Mm,
that everybody should be doing. I honestly, in my mind, I don't know why more people aren't doing it. But when I do take a general look at things and I see 14, 15-year-olds out there that just like put their cleats on and start kicking the ball around, I get it. They haven't been taught the habits yet of, hey, get in here and you've got a 5, 10, 15 minute routine before you can actually start kicking a ball. Um, you know, and it's good to see that the ones that do get it are getting the results and are getting to where they want to go.
yeah, no doubt. Salute to Shakira and Croy and Hal and everybody, anybody else out there listening who's been through that. It's brutal. It's a terrible way to learn. And not all, you can do all the right stuff and still get hurt. That is unfortunately the nature of sports when you
That's
push your
true as
bodies
well.
to the limit. Like there's just some uncontrollable stuff within human performance and athleticism and sports that you can't control. But The goal is mitigation. The goal is to optimize your chances of not getting hurt. And certainly this stuff goes a long way towards that. A mobility routine, very helpful as well. Coming up next, our chat with Cody Mooney from Pliability. Our guest today is Cody Mooney, who is a managing partner now. Congratulations on the new title at Pliability. Our old friend Sarah Hendershot connected us. We've known Sarah for years from her time at Momentous, but she's been working with Pliability for a number of years now. So I've kind of had an eye on it, Cody. So first of all, welcome to the show. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. So I guess the baseline question here for those that are unfamiliar is kind of what is Pliability? How do you define it? I know it's an app. I know it's obviously there's a lot of mobility and things in there and kind of in that lane, but how do you define what you guys have built?
We kind of define ourselves, Pliability, we call ourselves the human movement brand, but we are at core a stretching and mobility app. We give daily videos for passive stretching, and we are a complete platform to find tailored stretching for sports, for everyday use, all kinds of stuff. But we're kind of branching off into this like all-encompassing place to really kind of be the leader in this stretching mobility. We touch upon mindfulness, we touch upon breathing, but like at our core, it's stretching and mobility.
Got it. And these are self-guided stretches that you can follow along with in your app?
Yeah, so the app flow is, I can get you into that a little bit. So when you come in as a user, there's this weekly schedule, which has been our kind of like our core product forever, from the early days of ROMWOD when we started to where we are now after the rebrand. We just kind of like get this weekly schedule. So like the day, we'll just have this kind of like video that you'll have that day, and it's completely curated by us, and it's just an easy follow along, click and play mobility routine that you'll go through, passive stretches. You'll have some mindfulness in there, some breath work, and we give you that every day, and we're kind of programming that on our side each week for you to get this like all inclusive, full encompassing approach to stretching. And that's kind of like our foundation in our daily session that we call that. And then we have like a explore section of the app as well, where you can get a little bit more into some tailored stuff, some sport specific, so a little bit of corrective routines inside of there, corrective movements, a little bit more active.
So how do you recommend, like, I guess the real question here is, obviously, how do you recommend people to use it? All that kind of stuff we can get into, but like, why was this the lane that you guys decided to get into? Because it's obviously really important. People need guidance in this area. I think we see it as performance coaches where, people are obviously coming to us for deadlifts and squats and like weight room stuff, but then they get into our sessions and like, wow, this mobility stuff is really cool. So how did you guys kind of decide to attack this area of sports performance?
Yeah, so I actually got brought on a little bit later on there was a lot of ROMWOD pre-existing before I actually came into the company. So the little backstory to it is probably like about 8-9 years ago now, the company was founded as ROMWOD. We lived in the CrossFit space for many, many years. And it was founded by two brothers. One was a kind of yin yoga, very known in the space teacher, and the other was a CrossFitter, and the other one was like, I'm constantly beat up. What do I do? How do I fix my body? And they started kind of like formulating this concept called ROMWOD. And that is when the other founder came in, which is my business partner today, Scott Perkins, which is also the other managing partner. And he was the tech brains behind to bring this thing into a platform and create that. So there's that backstory. And we started inside of CrossFit. I think CrossFit was a very like native place for us to start. I actually used to be one of the athletes and users of the app, which is kind of funny. So I was like one of their athletes while I was competing in CrossFit because I was just constantly beating my body up daily and I needed it. So I think like at our core, it was kind of like, it was out of necessity of like, hey, like we see a sport that we all love, that we need this. And then it kind of started to grow to why we wanted to rebrand about a year and a half ago to Pliability, is because inside of CrossFit, it was making a massive difference. And as I think functional fitness started to grow inside of like the training world, we were like, this product, this idea that we have, what we're giving to people daily, like it needs to be outside of just the sport. We need to bring this a bit broad market. So we tried to rebrand to Pliability, and that's when we started getting into other sports and other avenues, and what we are now, like running with some running hubs, golf hubs. We still have our daily sessions like I talked about, but yeah, it was kind of just like we all lived in that space and we saw that this was such a crucial part of it, and we really all had a love for health and wellness, and we want to bring stretching and mobility is just as important as your squat cycle or whatever it may be that you're going to inside your training.
Got it. So, from what you've seen as an athlete and as somebody who is obviously, promoting this as something that people should be doing, and I believe in it too. I kind of want to get into the conversation of passive stretching and its benefits, because I feel like it always goes full circle. When I first started in this industry, passive stretching was almost a bad word. It was like, hey, this is a waste. This is a completely waste of time. Don't do passive stretching. Everything active, everything, 2 seconds or less. And then you start to see the benefits that there are some benefits to passive stretching. So can you talk a little bit about kind of what you've seen over the years throughout your career as somebody who uses this and somebody who, as an athlete who uses it, what are the benefits of this? Why should people be doing this? Why should we be paying attention to passive stretching in 2024?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it always has that stigma, and it always has had that a bit like kind of to it, like, oh, don't do it beforehand and all that. And I think it's, everyone has their own recipe that they like. But for me personally, like our passive stuff, we really call them recovery routines, and for a reason. So a lot of our stuff is usually meant to be done after your workout or after your physical activity, whatever it may be. But I mean, there's been studies proven, and we lean on some heavy SMEs inside the space, to help us with this, doctors, chiropractors, and when we're creating our content. But like the consistency in passive stretching really does help, elongate some of those muscles and create flexibility over time. And I think there's also this kind of mindful like recovery experience to it that also has a big play in a lot of the stuff that we have these wearables to do metrics now, and it's like your recovery score and stuff like that. So, I mean, for us, it has always been, we feel that like that passive approach is probably like our core foundation, but that really gives us our users kind of the best experience that we wanted to. We didn't want it to always be this super fast paced active thing. We want it to be kind of the down regulation, decompressing experience that you kind of get from the yin yoga background a little bit. And that's like what we've leaned into, but we've also leaned into a space a little bit where you get more of the corrective active stuff that is getting full range of motion inside of the joint and understanding what that does kind of mean. And again, leaning on some SMEs to like promote and create curated stuff that actually makes sense to live in that space too. So it's like they complement each other in a way. But we do always and will always believe that like passive stretches, they have a place for us. Sure. And consistency is key for sure.
Yeah, I do want to circle back around to the active stuff and the corrective exercise in a moment, but on the passive stuff and the research you guys have looked at, how much of it is like elongating the muscle, and if whatever they're measuring that versus the CNS response that you're talking about, and kind of allowing the body to relax and thus getting some of that feeling, the sensation of, oh, everything's elongated, everything is relaxed, and kind of how it feels versus any kind of true measurement that people with much more advanced degrees than at least Chris and I have are doing.
On myself as well. We lean into.
I didn't want to make any presumptions, but
no. Myself as well. I think that's like one of the cool things about our team is we have a lot of people that like, we're not ones that just say, oh, we know it all. We actually really research and lean into some people that are the professionals inside that space to help us out. But like, I mean, like you said, I think that there's multiple benefits to this kind of passive style stuff. And one of the big cool things that we've done is we have an integration with Whoop that has been allow us to like look at a lot of data and a lot of like recovery scores. And like our team on that side is really, I think that's helped kind of provide and probably like evolve our product in a way that is more data driven, which is cool. And I think that that's been like a huge part of what we've been doing, and just like looking at that stuff and being like, okay, like this does improve the recovery. So obviously there is beneficial to the CNS and slowing down and like allowing you to kind of push that again and perform. But then I think the other part of like elongating the muscles and the passive stretching, and it's just what we have seen over time, it's consistency is key. I think with so much of this stuff, and that's like the hardest part about what we do is having people create this stretching routine. And making it part of something that they do daily. I think that like that's where the true magic and that's where the true benefit does come from, is when we can really like build this consistent routine and foundation for people. And that's why we tried to create the like most easy click, play, follow along, get yourself into it, immerse yourself into it as quickly as you can, and just be like, let us do the work, you just follow. And that has really, I think, worked out for a lot of people and for us.
Yeah, so you said a couple of things that I wholeheartedly agree with, which is one, there's a place for everything, whether it be passive stretching, active stretching, weightlifting, Olympic lifting, whatever it is, there's a place for everything. Mm-hmm. And then consistency is key. So what are some of the things that you've seen in terms of if you really want to create change, if you really want to get those results, when we say we want you to be consistent, are we talking 10, 15 minutes a day? We got to keep this up for 2 weeks. What are you finding is the minimum effective dosage that people need to be able to practice to find the results that they want?
Yeah. So our daily routines, they kind of range. So we can go from our longer or just not short routine is about 18 to 23 minutes to 25 minutes maybe per day. And then on Thursdays, we have what we call our warrior session, which goes above probably 35 minutes for most of them. And then we also have a shorter routine for people that don't have that. But honestly, what we're looking for more is we have done something recently is like your streak score. So we're really kind of pushing and leaning people towards stretching 3 to 4 times per week and really kind of like creating that as your thing. Maybe follow along your training program, and most people do 3 on, 1 off, 2 on, 1 off. Like they kind of live in that cycle a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I think the time durations that we have, but we also understand that most people have an hour in their day, and they're also trying to fit a workout, a warm up, and all this. And stretching usually comes last, if so. But yeah, so I think 3 to 4 days per week is what we're really trying to lean in on. And then we have that 20 to 25 minute set duration for our daily session, but you can also bring that into a short routine if maybe that's not what you have. But we don't want you to always skip around on the session as well. That short routine mimics the longer, but it just allows you to have a little bit less duration inside the movements to still get the full approach that we want.
One thing that we've talked about a lot on the pod, and I've been thinking about a lot lately as I've launched a new training program here in DC, is the performance and injury prevention, like two sides of the same coin often. And when it comes to marketing, I don't know which one's more effective, whether to tell people like, hey, this thing will help you perform better, or hey, this thing will help make you feel better and prevent injury. How much have you guys thought about that? And because obviously mobility and like mobility does both. Like if you want a fuller range of motion to create more force, and by the way, to stay healthier, which also availability, ability, those things are tied. How have you guys thought about that, and what have you guys found in terms of what appeals to people?
Yeah, I mean, a ton. I mean, that's like one of the biggest messages I like to drive, because I think my goal, and I've always been I always loved the health and wellness space, but like my goal is always to help people continue to do what they love, whatever that may be in the physical activity space. So it's running, hiking, golf, swimming, CrossFit, whatever it may be. And I think when you start to put like stretching in there as one of those things, people are like, well, they need it to relate. They need to understand why this is going to help them have longevity in whatever they're doing. And unfortunately, a lot of that time it doesn't come until they have a negative experience, injury. You can't do it like X, Y, and Z, as like a lot of us do. Like, oh, I got injured and I know why, and now I'm gonna have to start stretching. So it's been crucial for what we do. Like on the side of marketing, everything in that way, we need to be able to get people to self-educate a little bit, to understand like there's so much benefit to this, and it's a preventative type strategy for us. You know what I mean? Like take this, use it as a tool, put it to your training, put it to your lifestyle to help you continually do what you do for as long as you want. We're not saying that you won't get injured, but like studies are out there to prove that like this stuff does help, and it's even if it's just pain or whatnot. But I mean, we go back and forth because there is a performance side of it, but not everyone is driven by performance. Some people are, which is amazing, and I love that, like myself being one of them. But some people just really want their bodies to move in a way that is free, and then to be able to just do what they love to do. And I think it plays into both of those.
So let's wrap up with this. You've now been with the company for a number of years now. You were a user before you were a part of it. Like, what is for you, the number one thing you feel like has changed about your routine, or that you've learned that you're like, if you meet someone and they find out what you do and you're trying to give them the 30 to 60 second or 90-second elevator pitch, like, what's the thing that for you was like the aha light bulb moment?
Honestly, man, it's just like, I think it's just understanding that a lot of us, we want the same thing. I think that a lot of us want to be grounded. We want to feel human again. I think there's been so much, like, a lot in the world that's been going on that, like, if it is any sort of physical activity, like there's a feeling that we all get from that is like a mutual feeling, but it might be different a little bit for some people, but there's like this underlying mutual feeling that movement allows us to be and feel more human. And I think that the more that we can understand that when our bodies can actually move free and we feel like we're moving free and we have the confidence to move free, that it really does bring a positive light into our life. And I just want to like continually promote that to the product and be able to spread that word. And for me, it's just been super cool to see all these case studies, if it's running, if it's golf, if it's all the stuff. And they're like, wow, like this has been, I had a call the other day with a firehouse, and there's just like some firefighters down in Virginia that were like using the app, and like this helped out so much. And it was just really cool to see it in like a lifestyle standpoint. And I was like, those are stories I love to hear, because it's like making a difference from all aspects. But like the biggest thing is that we all still want to continually move, and we also want to be able to move freely, whatever aspect that is. And we're kind of helping that way. So yeah, I mean, I think it's getting back to our roots as we are as humans, and movement is such a big part of that. I think it always will be.
Yeah, no doubt
I hear
about
you on
it.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Cody Mooney, managing partner at Pliability. Just search Pliability in the App Store on your phone, Google Play, whatever version of that you got. Cody, this was great, man. Really appreciate your time and you telling us about Pliability. And
thanks for having me, guys.
Considering the workout I did this morning, I feel like I could use something
You should
right now.
Yeah. Love that. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it a lot.